My name is Erica Lorraine Spencer, and I remain subject to state surveillance and terrorism by the state of California that is operating a malicious targeting system, which is referred to as federal group stalking and monitoring via communication devices. And it is in violation of federal stalking statute 18 U.S.C. sections 2261A subsections 1 and 2. My website and podcast serve the public good by publishing evidence of the public entity's ceaseless engagement in a pattern of conduct intended to stalk and monitor via communication devices, surveil, harass, and terrorize an American citizen in concert with the people of the state of California. Documentation serves the lawful purposes of wide exposure, federal prosecution, and influencing federal legislation with policies specifically designed to punish, dismantle, and disincentivize an unprecedented targeting system by a public entity that acts in concert with the people of the state in order to criminally place under surveillance and terrorize an American citizen, which is a matter of public corruption in the state of California. Notice: intellectual property theft is particularly egregious and equally unlawful where the sole inventor and creator of the intellectual property is the targeted individual. Erica Lorraine Spencer, subject to the unconstitutional and inhumane government system of gang stalking, otherwise referred to as federal group stalking and monitoring via communication devices, because of which the intellectual property created by the targeted individual, who is, in fact, Erica Lorraine Spencer, as the intellectual property also proves, serves to establish via evidence and expose the existence of criminal surveillance and thus an inherent threat posed by the U.S. government and the civilian population sharing engagement in the unlawful system. Such evidence, that includes all of the content created by Erica Lorraine Spencer, images, videos, audio, etc., belongs solely and entirely to Erica Lorraine Spencer only and is necessarily published online in order to protect her life, safety, and liberty as the targeted individual, who is also the intellectual property owner, no less protected from theft procured through targeting by a public entity. Theft of any intellectual property belonging to Erica Lorraine Spencer, which is necessarily committed while she, being both creator and inventor, remains oppressed by the public entity via criminal surveillance, is a criminal and inhumane means of infringement under all circumstances and not protected nor enforceable pursuant to any invalid or fraudulent acts of copyright, trademarks, patents, etc., including as it pertains to any ideas associated with or generated from the intellectual property or the intellectual property owner, Erica Lorraine Spencer, whether creative, business, or otherwise, nor does the intellectual property owner consent to any such means of infringement and theft. TYY666. The entity is monitoring, and demons are stalking and perfectly in line with me across the street, engaging in surveillance. I'm gonna get their license plate. And these sex offenders are engaged in now molesting with the demons that are driving on the same side. So last week it was the demons on, not last week. The entity's been engaged in what is molesting with impossible light while you're across the street. Oh, let me document doing so with the Ontario police while I come to document this demon. That's federal prison. 9JVE645, and the Ontario police zooming in, stalking me, molesting me like sex offenders that are being disbanded while I document a sex offender that they're monitoring me with. They cross path. Okay, that's P.O.C. All right, the entity's engaged in what's up? Okay, the entity's engaged in what is molesting with impossible light activity with the demons on the same side of the street. All right, and this is the demon that's parked in alignment to where I'm seated on the bench in the middle of the night because they're engaged in surveillance with the Ontario Police Department. All right, and sex offender after 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 sex offender molesting with impossible light activity. Doing so thousands of times, okay? Touching with impossible light. This is the prosecution of the state for sex offense, okay? The perpetual sex offense. All right, that's P.O.C. That's criminal summoning by the Ontario police that are stalking with light. Those are demons. That's the criminal use of a police vehicle. That's why they're being disbanded. It's criminal activity. P.O.C. Okay, it is currently 12:04 a.m. Wednesday, September 17, 2025. And what I'm documenting is, as I document a sex offender stalking in an Ontario police vehicle, I document the sex offender, meaning I encounter that same department crossing path, which is stalking. The Ontario police are always stalking, and I'm documenting them stalking in a conspicuous manner when they're driving on Euclid Avenue, as I am documenting the people of the state, which they are keeping me under surveillance, and so they're intentionally crossing path to communicate a threat, which is then documented, because all they're doing is stalking, okay? As I document the Ontario police, the first thing that those demons always do is they turn on their lights, because that's what the Ontario Police Department do with the Ontario Fire Department. They'll pull up in an ambulance, they'll pull up in a fire truck, because the demons are engaged in what is, oh, we're driving by because when we turn on our lights, that means we're doing something. They don't have any protection under the penal code. They don't have any protection under the welfare and institutions. They don't have any protection at all. The demon possessed engage in criminal summoning. It's a federal offense for which they're going to federal prison. The demons engage in the pattern of conduct of gang stalking by abusing the positions that they hold that they are unfit to maintain. And they turn on routinely their police lights as soon as I document them, because they are under the false impression that using their police lights makes it legitimate to engage in gang stalking. And that's why they're being disbanded and going to federal prison. It's the exact opposite. That's why they're being removed, because you're conspiring murder of someone in that position, and the abuse of that, using the helicopters, using the police vehicles, using the fire trucks and the ambulances, is extreme malice and very threatening. And that's exactly what Ontario police are doing. As I document them crossing path, this is what they're always doing. As soon as I document, they'll pull somebody over immediately. They turn on the police lights immediately. They start sounding sirens, and the implied thought process behind that is, first of all, they don't understand how they're being prosecuted. But the implied process behind that is, oh, I'm crossing path because not crossing path. They don't use my terminology. Oh, I'm en route to engage in something that I'm empowered to do under the law. I'm engaged in a traffic stop. I'm engaged in something that's related to the execution of the duties of officers. They're gang stalking. None of it's related to the execution of duties of officers. But this is the malice, and this is what I'm always documenting, okay? And they know that they're being documented. I've documented so many of those demons. As soon as I document, as soon as I read a license plate, as soon as I identify, they'll start sounding their lights and immediately pull somebody over. It's called criminal summoning. It's called criminal summoning when you already have the lights on and I encounter you, because they're engaged in surveillance and they're already stalking in the path, anticipating where I am, surrounding in the perimeter under the fake sun and an engineered light. These are demons that are intellectually inferior, and they have no protection, because gang stalking is not within the duties of the execution of, is not within the lawful execution of duties pertaining to law enforcement at all. And they're already proven. Neither is stalking me in helicopters and harassing me in helicopters day and night. None of it is protected at all. None of it is none of it is reasonable, and none of it is authorized. None of it is lawful, and none of it is protected at all. And this is clear. I've already prosecuted the Ontario police, but I want to document. The moment that I document that, I want to document this. The moment that I documented the third party, she's parked in perfect alignment to where I'm sitting on the bench. She's stalking in the path. She's doing so with the population of demons. License plate 9EWH 094. That's a paper plate. And every time that they're driving south on Euclid Avenue, like I stated, I'm being molested. The Ontario police are monitoring while I'm subject to that sex offense, which the Ontario police are a part of. And while they're engaged in that, remember, this is concerted conduct. It's like double dutch. They're sharing in what is light activity, they're sharing in presence, and they're sharing in what is ongoing audible activity. And they're monitoring on communication devices. And as I engage in documentation of it, the entity immediately engages in criminal summoning at Euclid and G Street. The entity at the intersection where El Pescador is located, that's where they engaged in criminal summoning, and they do so when they know I'm also documenting them. They don't have any protection. That's exactly why you're going to federal prison for wearing a police uniform, where you think that you can turn on police lights and engage in what is psychological torture. That's a threat to an American citizen, that you're gang stalking furtherance of murder. Nothing will ever make stalking me for an hour in a helicopter legitimate, or make it look legitimate. You can add as many fire trucks and ambulances. It will never erase the fake sun over me for 12 hours when you're following me around day and night in helicopters, when you're doing so in kidnapping. In that environment, when you're doing so and making up charges, and I have a laundry list of kidnappers of this agency who think that they can flip on the lights and sirens and that they are protected, and they are delusional. They're delusional. That's what the entity is doing while they're gang stalking. So I want to document the Ontario Police is engaged in sexual violence. They're engaged in criminal summoning. Vehicle 1030 is going to be on traffic cameras. They're right now stalking by driving south on Euclid, and they're going to be on the traffic cameras at Holt and Euclid Avenue at what is 12:09 a.m. and all they're doing is monitoring me. That's also why they're being put in federal prison. This is another demon. This is vehicle number 1109. You can hear them pumping on the gas. Those demons don't want to be documented. And all they do is turn on their police lights the moment that I start documenting. There is no legitimate presence. This is what the federal government recognizes. This is what these impotent demons don't. You're in the specific environment. All you're doing is engaging in surveillance. And that's what is known now. You don't have any form, meaning there's nothing that you can do where you're looking like anything other than somebody that's engaged in criminal surveillance, and you thought nobody knew about it, but everybody knows about it. And those that need to know, you're going to prison. And I told them that, and they're still engaging in sexual violence and stalking. And they're doing so with the people of the state. Those are sex offenders in those two police vehicles. And they just went engaged in surveillance at G Street in Euclid the moment that I document, and they cross path as I go to document this sex offender, this homosexual woman stalking me as a woman. She's wearing an Amazon t-shirt. And she's doing so while she parks in alignment to where I'm sitting. This is where the entity raises the fake sign. It's in alignment to my person. This is what the demons do when they're stalking in the parking lot. They stalk with light in perfect alignment to where I am located. This is what they're doing at the bus stop in Upland, California with the AAA truck. It's stalking in the path. Okay, while they keep a physical distance from you, they get in perfect alignment with you. That's a gang stalker that's doing so with the police who engaged in criminal summoning for this demon and all the rest of them to have light activity while they're stalking together. The Ontario Police is being disbanded. And it doesn't help when you want to flip on your police lights when you have obviously engaged in years of stalking, which was documented. It's not just hearsay. And that's, again, that malice is why you're going to federal prison. That's exactly why they're going to federal prison. They think they can murder someone and turn on their police lights and say, oh, I had to do it, and I can do it because I hold this position. Because I said that there's an emergency and I turned on my police lights, and that's the end of the story. And the end of the story is that you're going to federal prison for gang stalking, for terrorism. All right, it's currently 12:11 a.m. It is Wednesday, September 17, 2025. This is P.O.C. That's Ontario Police. Already got them stalking by helicopter. Remember, they're doing so conspicuously. That's the same agency. Ontario Police, they're engaged in criminal monitoring, which is demonic, and they're stalking while they're engaging in monitoring, which is criminal surveillance. And it's pursuant to a criminal system of surveillance that the entire city of Ontario and the state of California is engaged in. Okay, that's why the city of Ontario, the Ontario International Airport, is also stalking while the fake sun over 224 North Euclid Avenue, over me, is maintained over this same location where a population is the same entity at this same 224 North Euclid Avenue after 6 p.m. where that same agency, the Ontario Police Department, who are demons, engaging in what is stalking and harassment using a helicopter in particular to communicate an unlawful threat expressly and impliedly, especially while they are monitoring the evidence. That is, while I capture them, what they just did 5 minutes ago, and I begin documenting Wells Fargo at 240 North Euclid Avenue, engaged in terrorism with the Ontario Police Mule Car Smokehouse at 200 North Euclid Avenue, gang stalking with the Ontario Police, the 280 North Lemon Apartments, and Ontario, California, they're gang stalking with the Ontario Police, the Downtown Ontario Luxury Apartments at 320 North Euclid Avenue, they're gang stalking with the Ontario Police, the Metro, Metro 102, Lemon Avenue Apartments in Ontario, California. They're gang stalking with the Ontario Police. The 303 East B Street, Paul Leon, the Ontario City Hall is gang stalking with the Ontario Police. The Ontario Fire Department is in the same plaza. They are gang stalking with the Ontario Police. These are the facilitating venues that are in the zone of relevant positioning where I'm subject to monitoring in violation of federal stalking statute 2261A subsections 1 and 2. This is federal stalking. Federal stalking is occurring in the environment where I've shown you the fake sun is both here in the morning like it is right now, by the way, at 9:26 a.m. And it's still present like I documented at the food festival, which is nothing other than an iteration of the same criminal pattern of conduct, and that's why the impossible is a matter of evidence, meaning the fake sun, not the natural environment, because the sun, which is a star, a gaseous ball of fire that's in constant motion, is not going to hover over the Ontario Town Square over me, and it's also not going to still be in alignment to me at this same address property, like I documented, where that same agency is stalking by definition in that environment, targeting in that environment, which is also demonic. That's a demon of that same corrupt agency stalking using helicopters. And they're doing so as I'm documenting all the co-defendants: Wells Fargo, Mule Car Smokehouse, Metro 102 Apartments, Enterprise Truck Rental, the gang stalking security. You see her, and I got her license plate. Let me go ahead and document her license plate while the entity is monitoring online, the Ontario Wi-Fi network to be specific. The security is engaged in federal group stalking and monitoring, and she is wearing a patrol uniform, so that is the third-party company that's engaged in gang stalking. Just like Securitas at Ontario Town Square, Securitas is gang stalking with the City of Ontario, and so is the third party representing an employee status, while that employee is engaged in gang stalking with the City of Ontario. Doing so while you're working in the specific environment where you work and the fake sun rises and sets, and you're engaged in criminal monitoring of the target individual at your place of employment. And that's a basis of federal prison, by the way. It's how domestic terrorism is operated in the states where they're engaged in surveillance. The gang stalking security company, her license plate, one of them, is license 9 Mary David Xavier 906, a white Honda Accord, and she's also gang stalking me with knowledge that she's documented as a terrorist, and that third party company that she represents is documented with knowledge that it is documented acting in furtherance of murdering me, and then doing so with the Ontario Police, which is that security company threatening me, acting with impunity, and also that third party with that license 9MDX 906, engaging in targeting with the Southwest Airlines, which is the Ontario International Airport, and also doing so with the Ontario Police Department, who are engaging in that criminal pattern of conduct under a fake sun, which is speaking to that security company targeting me, and that demon wearing that security company's uniform, gang stalking me. And the Route 66 event is nothing other than an iteration of that criminal system that the City of Ontario is engaging in with Brightview. With this, as the City of Ontario, the municipality, and all the venues. Wells Fargo is a corrupt business that's gang stalking, maintaining its establishment under a fake sun, with the City of Ontario gang stalking by police and helicopter, and by the City of Ontario in commercial flights, and they're doing so under a fake sun that's still present after 6 p.m. Okay, that's P.O.C. And I'm going to continuously document. The entities engaging in that pattern of conduct. Southwest Airlines is crossing path again, and this is what they were doing with the gang stalker that I documented. She's not acting as an individual, but she's the one that's walking by in concert with the demons that are Southwest Airlines hovering over. Again, the takeoffs by pilots that are engaging in what is not terrorism, like the Ontario International Airport is, does not include hovering over. It doesn't include any sort of placement anywhere actually in the sky space over the Ontario Town Square, and it's also relevant because the fake sun sits here over me. That's how I'm able to capture the Ontario International Airport targeting me hours from now at the adjacent venue ARCO at 434 North Euclid Avenue at 12:34 in the afternoon, and in the evening at the same ARCO at 434 North Euclid Avenue at 6:45 in the evening. And this is again the same entity, the same actor, the same venues, the same security company, the same demon with her license plate. Again, let me read it again because she's repeating that criminal act, and this is the entity is going to be prosecuted. So this is what they do, and that's why they're going to be prosecuted in the way in which domestic terrorism requires in the United States in order to protect the lives and the dignity of American citizens. License 9MDX 906 is engaging in that same criminal pattern of conduct under a fake sun that is present at 6:45 p.m. where this same City of Ontario is stalking under a fake sun, and that's why it's over me at ARCO at 434 North Euclid Avenue. You can look at a Google map. It's on the opposite side of the same parking lot. Okay, that's the Southwest Airlines. That's the Ontario International Airport that's actually engaged in terrorism, not the use of an airport for the purposes of transportation, interstate commerce. They're engaged in surveillance, which is what the entire state of California is engaging in. And the Ontario International Airport, like the demon-possessed, it's a personality that you're recognizing, which is a pattern of conduct. The entity engages in very foolish, documented criminal activity as I recite their tactics in real time, which is evidence of them targeting as well. It's also speaking to what is fully known and going to be referred to in the prosecution, that a pilot taking off from either terminals will not include hovering over any of the venues where I've documented the Ontario International Airport stalking me through every airline.
None of it. And it's also stalking and monitoring and impunity relevant to prison time, relevant to damages, relevant to the prosecution for terrorism, and relevant to legislation when you are engaged in and policies that are going to be impacted, like the loss of your licensure, like the loss of custody of children, all the ways in which the entity is engaging in the pattern of conduct. But the entity is doing so while you are taking off over all of the venues that I've documented, and you're doing so with simultaneity to my referring to plain targeting. And by plain, I mean obvious targeting, not because they're also targeting with planes, so there's a little thing with words there, but I mean obvious targeting. And what the Ontario International Airport is doing is it's very obvious targeting. And so is the Ontario Police Department. So I just want to document that. And so since I am recording now, I'll go ahead and include what it is that I'm including: the Ontario Fire Department, OVITT Family Community Library, the 280 North Limit Apartments, that's a senior citizen complex. And the entity is not hovering over the 280 North Limit Apartments because remember, that's adjacent to the library. When I go to the library entrance, that's when you'll see Southwest Airlines and every other airline hovering over that location over the senior citizen complex. That's also the level of analysis that you have with regard to Alan D. Wapner stalking me using commercial planes, because he's engaged in what is psychological torture, which precedes murder committed by a government. That's not maintaining an airport for purposes of having an airport in the city. They're engaging in what is terrorism for maintaining the system of criminal surveillance in the city. All right, and they're doing so with corrupt businesses that include enterprise and every business that is associated with what is this criminal act that's going to occur under the guise of what is a Route 66, which I've documented before. It is a pattern of conduct. It's already on the record. Just like the demon-possessed that are engaged in surveillance, they do so under a fake sun. These are the demons that are stalking in bathrooms, stalking with impossible light, stalking with the engaged in the terrorism of stalking with the police department, all one person that are trying to murder one person, and they get together and call it things like a food festival, call it things like a Route 66 car show. Okay, they call it things like an event, a summer concert, a concern for children, the Ontario Montclair School District, all of the iterations of the same P.O.C. The entity is already surrounded with evidence, and this is what's going to be in court regarding public corruption, how the entity is engaging in the criminal system. Okay, Wells Fargo, and this is just the immediate environment. The third-party facilitating venue, the apartment complex, that's Saris Regis Group, downtown Ontario Luxury Apartments, Wells Fargo at 240 North Euclid Avenue, the Mule Cart Smokehouse at 200 North Euclid Avenue, where I'm documenting the Ontario Police stalking me by helicopter at 6 in the evening, and it's over me right now at 9 in the morning. In Southwest, the Ontario International Airport engages in that pattern of conduct. It's obvious targeting. And the entity is surrounded by what's in court, in other words, what's happening 9 hours from now, proven the entity is surrounded. When I say surrounded, surrounded. And the evidence is so plain and obvious for your benefit because you can pull it up as well. What I'm documenting right now, a time frame for the entity stalking by definition, because you can look up on YouTube what this same Ontario International Airport is doing at this same location at 6 and 7 o'clock in the evening, and you are witnessing what is the prosecution publicly of a corrupt government that's engaging in targeting me and furtherance of murder. And while you are witnessing a failed sacrifice, psychopaths that's getting to the diagnosis and the commitment of the demon-possessed gang stalkers are still engaging in that criminal conduct, which the federal government is watching, the federal court that's going to entertain this criminal case against the government for domestic terrorism. You're all witnessing it in real time, and they're still engaging in it because they're delusional. But this is very much committed because this Alan D. Wapner intended to commit murder. Mike LORENZ intended to commit murder. Okay, the entity that's engaged in kidnapping, they each intended to commit murder. Tracy Banks intended to commit murder. Jason Fields intended to commit murder. Everybody defaming my character, they intended to commit murder. The demon-possessed gang stalkers engaged in surveillance at the Ontario Town Square, they intend to commit murder. Enterprise, a corrupt truck rental company, it intends to commit murder while it's engaging in what is this pattern of conduct of surveillance as an entity. Psychological torture, ongoing harassment that they share in together while they're stalking in a very specific environment that surrounds and centers on me while they're engaged in stalking and monitoring. A bunch of demons engaged in public corruption. Okay, so this is P.O.C. It's currently 9:35 a.m. I will be publishing the images onto the Google Drive, and this is relevant to the pattern of conduct that is ceaselessly underway by that same entity. This is P.O.C. This is criminal summoning. Yeah, that's criminal summoning with the Ontario Police Department. That's stalking by helicopter as well. Remember when I walked out of the library, the same location where I'm at right now, yesterday after 6 p.m.? That's the fire department and the police department engaged in criminal surveillance. This is the criminal use of the police department's helicopters, criminal use of the fire department's vehicles, facilitation, and criminal surveillance. Okay, so this is the entity engaged in that. 8003833 is stalking in the path, while the entity sounds sirens, drives around the perimeter, driving south on Euclid Avenue, sounding the sirens. You hear the siren stop, stalking with impossible light activity. That's a demon. That's a terrorist. That is very much indeed stalking, with the demon driving the fire truck and the demon flying the helicopter. And they do so at the same time. They do so while they know that they're being documented for conspiring murder. Okay? I just want to be clear. Michael GERKEN, the entity is engaged in what is terrorism. Michael GERKEN is not a fire chief. This is a domestic terrorist, and this is exposing that. This is why he is in relevant position engaged in criminal surveillance. Remember yesterday evening, let me give you the timestamp. Look it up on the Google Drive yourself. You will see the fake sun at the same address where I'm located right now, where the use of sirens and helicopters and fire trucks are the criminal engagement in federal group stalking and monitoring. This is also exposing demonic activity amongst the demon-possessed who are of the Ontario Fire Department and the Ontario Police Department and the City of Ontario. Okay, so yesterday upon my exit of this, and that's proven by the presence of the sun that is right now, where a demon molesting me, 06348K1, a demon under the fake sun at 9:47 a.m. is engaged in what is stalking and molesting, while I'm referring to very damning evidence where you're hearing a demon using sirens and lights on a truck, which is light activity and audible activity, while they're stalking using a fire truck by crossing my path. While the fake sun is over me, it's at the same location when I walk out of the OVITT Family Community Library yesterday at 6:40 p.m. and you will see the fake sun. Okay, this is indeed a demon that is stalking with the Ontario Police Department, who are also sex offenders, engaged in monitoring my vagina while I'm documenting the homosexuals who are demon possessed, going into the bathroom on behalf of those demons that use helicopters to stalk me, because that's what they're doing in the bathroom, while the fake sun remains at the same address until the end of the day, which is also what I documented. Michael GERKEN and Mike LORENZ, Alan D. WAPNER, are engaged in the perpetual sex offense, and they're facilitating sexual violence amongst the masses while they keep a woman under surveillance and conspire murder in doing so, because that's why the government's ever engaged in gang stalking. And this is again why Jason Fields and Tracy Banks, etc., are going to prison. All right, this is the pattern of conduct, and it is, by the way, currently 9:48 a.m. All right, this is P.O.C. All right, the Ontario Police again flying in circles around, and 06348K1 is on surveillance cameras at Wells Fargo. It's a sex offender molesting my body with impossible light. That's a sex offender that wants to touch my buttocks, touch my thighs, touch my body, and doing so as a demon with impossible light that is also designed to keep me under surveillance while conspiring murder with the police that are stalking in a helicopter. And this is what the entity is doing on a daily basis, and you're not forgetful of that when I'm inside of the OVITT Family Community Library, where they engaged in kidnapping with the same agency, and they're going to federal prison. And there is no escaping from engaging in domestic terrorism with an agency that's conspiring murder, and that you thought was going to be the way in which you're getting out of documentation. And actually, it turns out that's exactly what's putting you where you are going as a domestic terrorist seeking to obstruct justice, federal prison. And the more that agency is stalking, it is more evidence proving that you are stalking as well, especially in that environment where the fake sun's remaining over the establishment where you're working and where you're gang stalking as a patron. A malicious engagement in this statewide P.O.C. where the demon-possessed psychopaths also presuppose that would never be connected or identified. The entity is again for the third time flying in circles around me while doing so with the agency. Michael GERKEN is documented, and the agency, the Ontario Police, Mike LORENZ, is documented. The Ontario International Airport, Alan D. WAPNER, is documented. This is all documenting Paul Leon, who's being removed from office. All right, this is again currently 9:49 p.m. P.O.C. All right, Ontario Police pacing back and forth over third-party facilitating venue that's gang stalking Wells Fargo at 240 North Euclid Avenue. That establishment is going to be prosecuted civilly and criminally. Sex offenders in their parking lot molesting me. Wells Fargo is being prosecuted as a sex offender. Wells Fargo is being prosecuted as engaged in criminal summoning with the City of Ontario. That's a federal offense. The entity is doing so pursuant to sexual violence and federal stalking under Title 18. Wells Fargo is going to be prosecuted while they are gang stalking with the agency that's flying over its establishment. They're gang stalking together. That's why the fake sun's over me at Wells Fargo. That's why the fake sun is still present at this same venue when I walk out of the library yesterday, documented at 6:40 p.m. And the entity that's surrounded by that evidence, they just engage in more provision of evidence. And guess where that's putting the kidnappers of the Ontario Police? Demons that you see on the internet, like Ticho, he's going to federal prison. When I show you the fake sun that's at the same entrance where he's engaged in criminal summoning on February 4th, 2022 at 11 in the morning, and the fake sun is still here at 6, he's going to federal prison. He also engaged in kidnapping, and that agency, just like he was in 2022 and in 2019, gang stalking and kidnapping with Tracy Banks, he's going to federal prison. So is Melnick, who engaged in kidnapping with Jason Knighton and Lester Keys under the fake sun at this same library that's present. The fake sun is present over me, showing that they're all demons engaged in this exposed criminal system, and that agency engages in more of it because they are psychopaths that don't have self-control. And with regard to that ego that is hostile to being told about what's going to happen and that you're caught red-handed, that ego is inspired to engage in more very damning provision of evidence. And Ticho and Melnick are going to federal prison, and so is every other demon that engages in criminal summoning and kidnapping, like the OVITT Family Community Library. 7PQV282, KNYKID2, 6XCP114, 9JWZ502. They're all inside a third-party facilitating venue, Wells Fargo, that's engaged in surveillance. 9TUR858, and this is, again, relevant to the gang stalkers of the immigrant population that are being deported. And also it's relevant to the demons that are engaged in gang stalking as, let me give you this license, 9RUP927. 32696J3, 8ZUT189. These demons are monitoring. The loud noise is occurring while they're crossing path, while they're driving north. Same time as they cross path with me. It's the same thing with impossible light. Same time while they drive by, impossible light activity. These are demons that are monitoring. This is the Route 66 demons that are engaged in the pattern of conduct, showing all of the iterations of public corruption where they're engaged in the conspiracy to murder as a corrupt society. 5T17257, P.O.C. It is Delta Airlines at, by the way, at 9:53 a.m. Delta Airlines taking off from the airport you can hear the plane and you can see the blue underbelly and the red logo on what would be the right side of the plane when they're flying in the direction west, hovering over this venue where fake sun is still present at 6:40 p.m. Delta Airlines is engaged in stalking, targeting with the provision of amplified noise. The sound of helicopters, amplified noise, the sound of that banging while one demon after another, after another, after another. Remember, that's the same thing that they're doing at nightfall while they're all molesting my body and taking my blanket off because they want to look at my body while they're molesting it with light, as demon-possessed sex offenders who are gang stalking while they're stalking with light. The demons that want to touch you with that's the predatory mind state. That's also psychopathic. It's very sick. This conduct with light, this is happening under a fake sun, and Delta Airlines is engaged in that. The terrorist, the Ontario International Airport, is going to be removed. It is literally a threat to the public, and so is Delta Airlines and Southwest Airlines and every other airline. 5T17257 is gang stalking. You'll see old Biddy engaging in surveillance. The entity thinks if they put a white woman, an aged white woman, then that looks, again, this is a racist entity. This is a demonic entity, and they rely on the superficial. You can put somebody that is black and young looking like myself. They are engaged in the pattern of conduct. The identity, the class, whatever it is that these demons differentiate amongst themselves, it's legally irrelevant. This demon is maliciously engaged in the pattern of conduct, equally engaged in what is an unlawful threat. The Ontario Police Department needs bodies present around while they're engaged in surveillance, and needs planes and maintenance of presence over my head, which is the Ontario International Airport's role. And you will see demons that are going to prison like Ticho and Melnick that are at this venue, by the way, and you'll see the entity hovering very low in the sky space using planes, which is terrorism that this airport is engaging in as of 2025, and I've been documenting it for years. And the ongoing terrorism by the Ontario International Airport, it's a matter of national security that this murderer, this terrorist, the Ontario International Airport, be shut down. And murderers and terrorists like Delta Airlines, like Southwest Airlines, be removed publicly exposed and civilly and criminally prosecuted. But this is, again, a matter of what is going to result in removal of such companies based on their exposure as Murderers, co-conspirators to murders, they're engaged in terrorism. I've been documenting Delta Airlines targeting me for years. I've been documenting Southwest Airlines targeting me for years. I've been documenting Alan D. WAPNER targeting me for years, including with the Ontario Police, specifically for the purpose of committing murder and kidnapping. That's the malice that Delta Airlines is targeting me with. Okay, and Delta Airlines is also a sex offender. That's relevant to hovering over the Ontario Town Square under a fake sun that's still present at 6:40 p.m., which is evidence that's going to put demons like T. Cho on video on February 4, 2022 in prison, where terrorists and sex offenders and kidnappers like him belong. And that's directly relevant to stalking, because that's what you're doing under a fake sun that remains over one person as that one person documents it, and is subject to ongoing harassment, which is also relevant to what is, even on its surface, a public nuisance. The entities engaging in this public nuisance around me on an ongoing, repeated, systematic basis. Okay, that's beyond what is any sort of reasonable engagement, and the reality is that it's the pattern of conduct. It's currently 9:57 a.m. This is P.O.C. Remember, I'm documenting the fake sun over the OVITT Family Community Library, which is right behind where I'm sitting right now, the Ontario Town Square, where the entity moves the fake sun east to be over that entrance. And then it's remaining over that entrance, like I documented, in the middle of the afternoon. Let's go ahead and revisit that. You can look it up on the Google Drive because it's published already. I capture documentation on a daily basis. And on September 16, 2025, the entity has the fake sun at 6:40 p.m. as I walk out of that entrance. It's over the same entrance in the middle of the afternoon, which is what I capture at 1:01 p.m. And yet it's over me, and it's going to be east of where it's at the Ontario Town Square right now to be over me at the entrance at 10 a.m. 11, 12, 3 hours later, it's still over that entrance at 1 p.m. And you have T. Cho and Melnick and R. Guerrero, who are all going to federal prison, gang stalking me at that same entrance at 11 in the morning in February before daylight savings time. And it also remains at 6:40 as I exit that entrance of the same library, where it's over my head right now, and I'm still looking at it at 6:40 p.m. It's not in Los Angeles. And the sun is not setting in Los Angeles, by the way. But the entity does have evidence of me capturing a sunset through my bedroom window at Alvarado Gardens, and that's not what's happening outside of the entrance of OVITT Family Community Library. It's not also going to be seen through my bedroom window at Alvarado Gardens on Alvarado Street while the Los Angeles Police Department are not coincidentally, but pursuant to a pattern of conduct, stalking in helicopters. Okay? This is the P.O.C., and that's the entity that keeps the fake sun, and that's going to put every single last one of these demons of that same agency that's just engaging in willy-nilly targeting. Well, it's going to be willy-nilly, like Oprah Winfrey of federal prosecutions, because they're all going to prison. Federal prison sentence for Cho, federal prison sentence for Melnick, federal prison sentence for Guerrero, federal prison sentence for C. Torres, L. Martinez, C. Hazelwood, Owens, B. Hook, B. Hook, Nathan Morgan, the entity that's engaged in kidnapping, Jason Knighton, Lester Keys, S. Patty, A. Morris, Corp. Robledo, all these demons gang stalking, talking about you're engaged in security of the premises. No, they're gang stalking in the same specific environment. The fake sun is still here at the food festival on Saturday at 6:03 p.m. when the same conduct is happening, flying around in circles, terrorizing and psychologically torturing me while that agency is engaged in demonic activity right in front of your face. And this is documentation, detailed documentation, long-term in existence, to put that terrorist where it belongs, disbanded. And the terrorists of the Ontario Fire Department, and the terrorists of the Ontario International Airport, the terrorists of the City of Ontario, the gang-stalking mayor, all being dealt with regard to that body of evidence of the P.O.C. Okay, and this is shared by the people of the state who are going where exactly domestic terrorists belong, who engage in kidnapping. And what you're looking at are sex offenders that are over 75. Okay, this old biddy sitting up, taking a time out of her day. She needs to go take her Similac instead of gang stalking me at the Ontario Town Square with the police. Okay, she's half a block away from meeting her judge. Okay, and while she's gang stalking me and has much more things like her edema, her high blood pressure, her liver spots, but she's gang stalking under the fake sun, and the prosecution is different because she's crusty skin and over 80. Okay, and that's a demon. That's why she's getting that description. That's a criminal. That's why she's a terrorist. And that's the entity that's engaged in that. And that's the level of evidence that's prosecuting. Because while I have all that evidence, what's in Florida? What is in Missouri over you, over your workplace, over the police department in Miami, at Miami-Dade, Florida? What's over them? What's over the White House? What is over the United States Supreme Court? What's over the California Supreme Court? While I'm documenting and remaining at the OVITT Family Community Library, where this terrorist is stalking. License plate 8UJJ158, and they're going to prison. because the agency's been engaged in stalking with corrupt businesses like Brightview, GST Systems, like the City of Ontario, it's a corrupt municipality. 88301Y2, this is Orbit Equipment Rentals Incorporated. That's a demon driving the truck, and that's a corrupt business. Audible activity, light activity, relevant positioning. And that business and that demon engages in that on behalf of the government while knowing that their terrorism and furtherance of murder is being documented. That's the enemy to the United States. Corrupt businesses engaging in surveillance, corrupt businesses engaging in what is monitoring American citizens, keeping them under surveillance in order to target them, like I'm showing, in furtherance of murder. Sex offenders, 7TLW290, the fake sun moving east to be over the same entrance that it is at 1 o'clock. And those demons that I documented at 1 o'clock at the same entrance are sharing in that pattern of conduct. 8UJJ158 is pacing. Just documented. All they're doing is driving down the street, made a U-turn, and went right back up the street. This is a demon, a male, a sex offender monitoring my vagina. 8UJJ158 and trying to live their life, absent a criminal record of a sex offender, which is exactly what he needs and what's going to be handled. Identified as a terrorist in this country and identified as a violent sex offender. Seeking to murder a woman that he is sexually violating and keeping under surveillance with a police department that's stalking and psychologically torturing, which he shares in as a population. Anthus is sharing in that. They are special needs while they call themselves taking care of those that are mentally ill. They are mentally ill. They're gang stalking demons under a fake sun, bringing in those that are of a specific level of mental incapacity, which is irrelevant with regard to their demon possession, by the way. Irrelevant. P.O.C. It is currently, let me get the time, 10:02 a.m. and I'm going to show you the fake sun that's over the same entrance that it is at 1 o'clock in the afternoon yesterday, and the same entrance where I walk out, and it's present at 6:40 p.m., which is directly relevant to the disbanding of that Ontario Police Department, incentivizing sexual violence amongst the demons stalking inside of the OVITT Family Community Library, boys and girls, while they're engaging in what is stalking with the possible light. As I go to the entrance and they walk into the door, and they're sitting at the circulation desk, and they're greeting, and you hear me, and those are the same ones engaged in kidnapping with that agency. They're going to prison. They're going to federal prison while they're having fun, stalk with impossible light, stalk with these demons. And the employees, Sean Thrasher, they're going to federal prison. My evidence is already on the record. You're going to federal prison. So while they're engaging in that, guess what is inevitable? Federal prison. It is inevitable. And that's establishing policy as well. Anthesis is gang stalking with the people of the state. And this is, I want to be clear, the entities of demon possession and having some sort of mental incapacities like Down syndrome or something, I want to be clear, it's distinct. And it's not a barrier to the pattern of conduct. And anthesis is engaged in what is bringing in those of that condition to engage in the pattern of conduct. And that's abuse, by the way. Those are the same demons that are unfit to be in the medical profession, that are monitoring my vagina, and that are stalking as a corrupt company. Don't forget about the engineer light inside of the depths of the library in the middle of the afternoon while the fake sun's over the same entrance. Don't forget about that while the entity is stalking as I'm documenting outside and stalking inside as well. This is relevant to public corruption. License 9JZN411. That's P.O.C. Those are indeed homosexuals that are stalking with the police department as well. That's following me everywhere. The police are following me into the bathroom. They are stalking while homosexuals are engaged in surveillance, stalking, and obsessed with my vagina inside of this so-called family community library. It's a family and a community of demons. And it's a criminal system, and it's sexually perverted and demented. All right, that's what's relevant to that. And the fake sun does indeed move. You'll see that. I'm going to capture images of it right now, of the fake sun that moves east to be over the entrance after sitting over the Ontario Town Square where Southwest Airlines and Delta Airlines are stalking me. That's why that fake sun moves over me. And that's where the Ontario police are stalking me and the people of the state. 5WKX299 and 8WUH703. Okay, P.O.C. A bunch of demons wearing City of Ontario uniforms. That's a municipality. That's the removal of Paul Leon. He's responsible for this corruption. He's responsible for this criminal activity that's occurring under his watch. He's facilitating it and enabling it. And it's relevant to everything going on, every act of construction, every act of events going on. It's facilitating the same pattern of conduct. That's why I'm capturing the food festival and the fake sun remaining. That's why I'm capturing the preparations for the Route 66, and the pattern of conduct is remaining the fake sun over me. They're not even actually focused on the performer or the food or the event itself. They're all monitoring me. It's public corruption. It's P.O.C. All right, this is the pattern of conduct. And now you'll see Southwest Airlines hovering over the 280 North Limit Apartments like I described earlier, while while they're stalking with demons with impossible lights, 7LJV437, 7BSK572, hold on, cancel, 7BSK472, I believe, hold on, just less this, 572, and Southwest Airlines is hovering, like I stated, not over the center of the Monterey Town Square anymore, but over the 280 North Lemon apartment section. Okay, because I am, just like the fake sun has, moved east to be over the library, 97941X2, third-party gang stalking, crossing path, doing so as a population. And they're also engaged in what is literally watching their demise, their oncoming demise. The federal court that's watching me prosecute on the internet with regard to engaging what is walking to the book drop, to engage in pacing under the fake sun. You're going to look at an iteration of public corruption. This is what Southwest Airlines is doing in the sky space. This is license 7LJV437. This is what the demons are doing when I'm documenting the fake sun in the evening. And this woman with her 2 kids gets out with her hazard lights on, goes to the book drop, and then goes back. That's pacing while the entity sounded helicopter activity. It's the same pattern of conduct, okay? OVITT Family Community Library is a corrupt establishment. Every employee is a demon. That's insider information, and they're engaged in demonic activity. And you need to know that demonic activity includes monitoring the genitalia of your children, and that's what Southwest Airlines is engaged in. Monitoring you in a sexually perverted manner, and that's what Southwest Airlines is engaged in. And they are stalking, very detailed stalking. As you see, the Ontario City Hall, Paul Leon is a violent sex offender keeping my vagina under surveillance all day long. And Paul Leon's being removed from office because pilots taking off from the airport will never include them flying over the Ontario City Hall, the Ontario Senior Center, or the Ontario 280 North Lemon Apartments, or the Ontario Town Square, where I'm showing not only that clear means of targeting, it is shared with the people of the state, the population that he is a part of, the community of demons, gang stalkers that he is a part of, but also 5PIZ 809, also as I move, so does that population of demons under that fake sun move. And that's the prosecution of Wells Fargo. That's the prosecution of Mule Car Smokehouse. That's the prosecution of Saris Regis, i.e. Downtown Ontario Luxury Apartments, ARCO, Chevron, Metro 102 Apartments, and every other business that's engaged in the P.O.C. The fake sun, you'll see it right now at 10. It's currently 10:08 a.m. It's still at this entrance. It's over the top of my head at the same entrance at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. That's what I documented yesterday. The Ontario International Airport is engaged in terrorism, and so are the people of the state, and so is the Ontario Police. They're stalking as I'm documenting and publishing that evidence, and it's a list of demons that you're going to witness going to federal prison for terrorism. Because this is what they're doing when they're wearing police uniforms and engaged in what is harassment, because they're being documented. And they're documented criminal acts of obstruction of justice when they don't have any authority under the law. And they're also exercising fictitious exercise of authority pursuant to the purpose of obstructing justice. They don't want to be documented, they don't want it exposed, and they're trying to accomplish murder before I can expose what they're doing. And that's not going to happen. And you're going to federal prison for engaging in this criminal system at its outset, and also trying to obstruct justice, which is done by an entity, including the city and the city council and everybody on that council. Alan D. WAPNER, you have Jim Bowman, Paul Leon, Daisy, she's a demon, and so is Deborah. They're all demons, and they're engaged in public corruption. That's why the whole population is engaged in stalking. That's why I'm documenting the fake sun in inexplicable manners that are irreconcilable, and also the irreconcilable stalking. That's what it is in the specific environment by the airport and by the police, who are, by the way, at this OVITT Family Community Library. And as I'm documenting them gang stalking at this venue under the fake sun, all those demons that are that agency is being disbanded, and they're going to prison. They're bearing weapons, and that's an unlawful threat to your life. They commit murder all the time, and you are getting away with it, controlling the narrative, even trying to establish the target individual as the threat, as the criminal, as the sex offender, like they lied about on June 16, 2022. You're going to prison. You're going to federal prison, straight up and down. That's the entity that's flying in circles over me, and you're mindful of the evidence that you could pull up on YouTube right now. You could pull it up right now. Okay, that's P.O.C. It's currently, by the way, 10:10 a.m., and this is what you're mindful of when demons like 7LJV437 are engaged in criminal monitoring with the community of demons, the OVITT Family Community Library. Okay, that's P.O.C. The entity that's stalking by planes and helicopters is doing so while my vagina is exposed in the bathroom, keeping it under surveillance. The entity is doing so under the fake sun while my vagina is being kept under surveillance by a bunch of sex offenders. All right, and the entity is doing so in the specific environment. Please go. The entity is engaging in this in the specific environment, which is also inside. That's why I captured at 1 o'clock in the afternoon engineer light on the wall inside of this library, and everybody's engaged in what is activity creation, monitoring one person. That is myself, the one that's prosecuting them as well. P.O.C. surveillance is underway around bathrooms. That's sex offender conduct. Stalking is underway inside of the library. That's psychopathic conduct, and it's malicious. It's public corruption, P.O.C. This is activity creation. And prior to that, it was amplified through the walls. Okay, while indisposed in a private space under the fake sun. These are the entity that's under the fake sun that's still over the venue at 1 o'clock. It's 11:46 a.m. This is literal stalking in a bathroom. And those that are doing that of the same gender, that is accurately referred to as homosexual predators. So literally, while you have, for example, as I've documented, the entity engaged in criminal summoning while monitoring in a bathroom, being a sex offender, sharing in that sexual violence as Sean Thrasher, and then engaging in what is criminal summoning while he is the sex offender, okay? This is federal prison. This is P.O.C, the entity engaging in terrorizing me by amplifying noise in the bathroom, and then coming in, stalking in the stalls to engage in the P.O.C. P.O.C, it is 11:46 a.m. Alrighty, coming in to maintain activity while ongoing P.O.C. in a private space, which is exceedingly perverted and occurring in the same specific environment, which is what I'm capturing. Alrighty. It's all activity creation. The same demonic pacing, the same impossible light, the same ongoing stalking with noise, including the type of noises you make in a private space. In order to cross path, in order to stalk me in the bathroom. Those are the homosexuals acting on behalf of the Ontario Police Department. The same one that's following all around inside of the city of Ontario in a helicopter. That's what's filling on behalf of that entity, the bathroom. And so is Securitas, right? Yeah. So is Securitas, crossing path, walking inside of the bathroom, walking outside of the bathroom, presence in the library. Remember the impossible light on the wall in here, and you see this about 50 people, more than 50 people are monitoring my vagina. More than them engaging in what is knowledge corporately. This is an unprecedented and inhumane violation of privacy that is predatory, sexually motivated, and that level of perversion is demonic. And they're also psychopaths while they engage in this as a society, and it's an unspoken system of surveillance. It is demonic, and it is public corruption that is relevant to sexual violence. And this is sexual violence that a government engages in while maintaining the illusion of a criminal justice system to deal with sex offenders. And the government itself is a sex offender, and the population is a sex offender. All right, it's 4:20 p.m. at the same venue. Well, I already captured the fake sun after 6 p.m., 6:40 p.m. to be exact. Covering up the fake sun does not remove that evidence while the entity is engaged in surveillance. This is P.O.C, bathroom monitoring. All right, this is documentation of ongoing terrorism. Gang stalking is domestic terrorism. You have a population and the government itself that is engaged in stalking, and the psychopathic practice of violating the privacy of one person as a government and at the population itself that is in the shoes of the government and maliciously existing and conducting this stalking system under the guise of being private citizens when they're exploiting the Constitution under the law, because it's public corruption, and it's public corruption happening in plain sight. Okay, so currently right now, 9:44 p.m., a demon is driving gang stalking with Ontario Downtown Luxury Apartments at 320 North Euclid Avenue, that entire apartment complex, which is Sarah's Regis Group, headquartered in Newport Beach off of Jamboree. They're being documented as the sex offender that's engaged in federal group stalking and monitoring. They're engaged in what is the inhumane engagement and what is the corporate invasion of privacy of an American citizen that Sarah's Regis Group is keeping under surveillance through its employees through the criminal use of the establishment itself at the location where the government is stalking over the roof of the venue, around the perimeter of the venue, and on the grounds of the venue, as I've documented the City of Ontario engaging in. And they're doing so through the people of the state, like this third party that is stalking by driving on the roads and the highways. The government has no warrant or probable cause. Neither does CEASELESS Regis Group provide for any lawful basis for the government, like it is, to engage in criminal surveillance in what is a sex offense committed by the government. The perpetual sex offense is sexual violence committed by the masses. It is an inhumane and incalculable, sexually motivated method of terrorism, where the entity is engaged in what is the psychopathic pattern of conduct proven through a body of evidence of what is stalking with light, and that's for the criminal purpose of surveillance, which CEASELESS Regis Group is the property management company that is the people of the state identified by that company name engaged in federal group stalking monitoring at third-party facilitating venue, downtown Ontario luxury apartments, and it is again located at 320 North Euclid Avenue. Excuse me. So the entity is engaging in what is repeatedly through the masses. As you can hear vehicles driving by, it is literally the incalculable harm of what is the prosecution of the government. The government is going to be prosecuted for a sex offense that you cannot calculate the harms for. You can't calculate, you can't quantify rather, what are the inherent damages that are inherent to violating someone in the most absurd and demonic and supernatural ways. That's getting to malice too. When you're targeting somebody, you're harassing someone and terrorizing someone in a supernatural manner, like the demon possessed are, like the state of California is, through what is impossible light activity, doing it again right now at what is 9:46 p.m. and I captured the video last night, so you know exactly what the entity is aiming onto my person, while, by the way, it is evidence of the government still engaging in criminal surveillance and furtherance of murder, which officials are going to be in federal court for. Nonetheless, the entity is engaging in this and is doing so pursuant to what is an intention and a desire and obsession with touching while stalking to surveil and ultimately murder. Psychologically, torture is that which is occurring before murder occurs. And this is a pattern of conduct that the government engages in with a population. And the government, there is no existing lawful basis to engage in gang stalking. And it is not only unconstitutional, it's outright unlawful and inhumane. And so is the sexually violent pattern of conduct built into gang stalking. The demons are crossing path on what is D Street, driving what is driving west and then turning south onto, or turning, continuing west or turning north onto what would be Euclid Avenue, which is never going to result in the same way that the investigation of pilots taken off from the Ontario International Airport is never going to result in hovering over the downtown Ontario luxury apartments. This venue is surrounded with evidence. It is going to be the prosecution for a sex offense of a company, which represents the people of the state. It's going to be prosecution for terrorism of a company that's acted with impunity while CEASELESS Regis has been engaged in gang stalking. Remember, the demons that are on the roads and the highways stalking me right now? CEASELESS Regis is going to be prosecuted for what they're engaging in as an entity. And this is why you don't target American citizens with the government, because you are going to be prosecuted like the prosecution is going to be executed like every other type of criminal conspiracy. CEASELESS Regis is documented as engaging in sexual violence with impunity, which is relevant to damages in the civil prosecution and the criminal prosecution, where you have what is the entity engaging in criminal activity in the name of a company, which is how a government is maliciously targeting an American citizen, and you have no suspicion, no connection that the government's engaging in surveilling you while a business is in operation. And that business is representing presence. That business is providing for what is light activity. That business is the basis and where ongoing audible activity is created and maintained and creates the guise for any of it, such as construction at that downtown Ontario luxury apartments. Construction would also be a basis for stalking with light activity, while you have what are signage and construction cones. This is how they engage in light activity. The demon possessed that are engaged in what are parking all around and on the property of the downtown Ontario luxury apartments for whatever that venue permits to do so, while they're exploiting what are private property rights that they do not have and they're not exercising while gang stalking is underway. That's prosecution for the malice behind CEASELESS Regis Group sexually violating me through the thousands of people that are molesting me on a daily basis while I am outside in the population. The government is stalking me. Okay, that's relevant to the entity that's doing so. The entity is doing that with the government that I'm capturing in images, stalking me by flying over that apartment complex, stalking me by crossing path at that apartment complex, and also doing so by helicopter, which is a threat to my life that Sarah's Regis Group shares in. And this is nothing other than the legal analysis of a criminal conspiracy executed by both the people of the state and the state that's acting directly and vicariously. The entities engaging in demonic conduct, and this is legally analyzing their demonic and demented behavior, which is to be prosecuted in both civil and criminal courts. And it is notable that the entity acts with impunity. That is conspiring my murder, which Sarah's Regis shares in. Sarah's Regis committed that and engaged in that with noted impunity. And that's relevant to damages. It's relevant to a criminal prosecution regarding charges. It's relevant to the public information regarding a domestic terrorist like Sarah's Regis. And domestic terrorists are enemies of this country, just to be clear. All right, the entity's doing this, and I want to document license plates that are acting as an entity as well. Sharing in what is the pattern of conduct. You have the demons, the more that I document, as I capture images, for example, as I capture screenshots, as I capture, for example, the address or whatever it is I'm doing on my phone, more and more demons get in traffic at that intersection to touch me over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. I've been documenting sexual violence, and that's psychological torture and terrorism by a population. The entity is doing so through also going to the extent for it to happen. It's not even happening in a natural manner. It's happening in a supernatural manner, which is aiding to the harm, the psychological torture, the harassment, and the inherently threatening conduct, especially as documentation. That is a federal government that's engaged in an ongoing prosecution and investigation, which is also relevant to Sarah's Regis' criminal engagement and what is obstruction of justice. Okay, and this is the entity that's gang stalking through Sarah's Regis' employees and through Sarah's Regis' residents, any of the demons that are visiting at that venue, and all of the people of the state that are gang stalking by nearly being in the parking lot, on the grounds, around the venue, and doing so pursuant to a pattern of conduct. This is how you're going to prosecute and disincentivize gang stalking by the public. That is doing so in furtherance of murder. Okay, molesting with impossible light again at 9:51 p.m. The demons are crossing path. They're on surveillance cameras. They're on surveillance cameras in traffic. They're on surveillance cameras at every business. And this is the entity that's engaging in criminal conduct. And it's going to be the prosecution of immigrants. It's going to be the prosecution of households. It's going to be the prosecution of neighborhoods. It's going to be the prosecution of the government. And the entity is currently doing so. And this is the impunity that's informing federal policy. It's not too intense. It's not too extreme when you are getting to understanding the character of the demon possessed, of the mentally ill that are engaging in gang stalking in the first place. And the impunity is that which is the baseline understanding for psychopaths that are bloodthirsty, psychopaths that are pedophiles, psychopaths that are rapists and murderers, that engage in ongoing and increasingly violent behavior the more that they are exposed, actually, when they learn of being held accountable. That doesn't incentivize stopping it. The demon-possessed who are psychopaths, they resort to more violence. That informs policy. That informs policy. And policy is going to surround the operation of corrupt businesses like Sarah's Regis that are gang stalking in California. That informs legislation that is going to surround the gang stalkers who are the people of the state, the very civilian population who are domestic terrorists, enemies of the United States that are also at the same time making up the population, which is a serious problem in this country. It's a real problem when the enemies are the civilian population itself. Okay, and they're engaging in targeting with the government. So you're talking about what is a dual issue here. It is both a fundamental issue with the government's corruption, and it's also a fundamental issue with regard to the corruption of the population. Both enemies of what is the fabric of this country. And that's relevant to me being molested by sex offenders that are operating, acting by the masses. That's also showing and proving a pattern of conduct, by the way. When you have what are ostensibly strangers sharing what is placement on the roads and the highways, and they're engaging in what is repeating the same supernatural act toward one person for the same criminal purpose, that is speaking to a population that poses a threat to the safety of American citizens in this country, and they are engaged in domestic terrorism. It's gang stalking. All right, so I'm going to read license plates of sex offenders that are acting as an entity. 5S37651 license plate 7ERG915. License plate 3898566. That's an Indiana plate for United Rentals. It's a corrupt business engaged in monitoring, engaged in stalking as a company. License 8, Charlie Thomas Victor 111. License, let's see. License 8, Xavier Roger Uncle 211. So every vehicle that you hear, in your mind, you need to understand that the sex offense is being repeated over and over and over again, okay? So it is as though you are, and you're going to assign and restore the dignity to American citizens that are sexually violated, whose privacy is violated and stolen from them, whose rights are deprived by the masses as well, and that's getting to what is inhumanity. When a population is engaged in sex offense, when a population is engaged in criminal activity against one person, it's inhumane. Okay, it's exceeding criminal activity. The entities engaging in this conduct, and as you hear vehicles cross path with me, you can hear them driving by, you need to understand in your mind, it is not different than a sex offender that is with their hands molesting my person, because that's what they're doing, touching my breast without my consent, touching my thighs without my consent. And then a sign in your mind, understand the numerosity, pure numerosity. It's speaking to the incalculable harms where you cannot quantify. What an entity is also doing in a supernatural, that is a demonic means. That's a whole other level regarding psychological torture. You're trying to murder the person that you're psychologically torturing through the masses. And this is what companies are engaging in, companies like Sarah's Regis. Okay? When you hear the vehicles, that's what I want you to be mindful of, be cognizant of, because that's what they do. This is what gang stalkers do. This is what the government does when they are intending to murder somebody, and they do so with impunity. Remember, I've been documenting for years. So the demons are just now, while they're still delusional, they're still gang stalking, they are just now thinking in their minds about what are the possible consequences coming. But they weren't thinking about that. And what the truth of who these demons are, the truth of who these psychopaths and these serial killers and these pedophiles are what they're doing in 2020 and 2021, when they never thought that they were going to get that they were going to be held accountable, when they thought I was going to be 6 feet under. That's the true character. What you see them doing in 2022, that's their true character. This is their true character now, because they're still gang stalking. They commit sexual violence as a whole city every day, and the nation is going to know about the sex offenders, the murderers that fill the city of Ontario. They're going to know about that. But you need to understand, the mask is off in 2022. The mask is off in 2021. When you hear them engaging in defamation on the sidewalk when I'm outside documenting, these are demons that were sure that no one was ever going to hear my voice, and I was going to be immediately written off as being some sort of crazy person, just a Looney Tune, while they were projecting their mental illness onto me, because they know that they're sick, and they're embarrassed and ashamed by the truth that I speak about them. And they lack self-control, so they engage in more targeting, which I then use to prosecute them. The entities engaging in this P.O.C., and these are sex offenders that are engaged in sexual violence in secret as a whole society. A whole society of sex offenders. That is shattering the illusion that you're presented intentionally, that sex offenders are those that are identified on the Megan's list, and they are reported and they're told on, and they are confined, and they are rooted out. They're snitched upon, and they're prosecuted, and the government hunts them down. No, the government is the sex offender. It's the government. It's the government. Headline news, okay? That's the plot twist. The government is the sex offender. The government is acting through every single last person. This is criminal surveillance. And that's a whole illusion there, present to do serious work on your mind. Serious deceit. All right? This is relevant to the license plates that I'm documenting. Graffiti protective coatings, license plate 09979 Edward 4. License plate I'm going through my documentation. License plate 9, Mary David Xavier 906. License plate 6, Xavier Charlie Paul 114. 7, Karen David Frank 769. 8, Victor Xavier Frank 855. 7, Xavier Larry Wendy 591. 7, Charlie 22208. 8, Karen Paul Xavier 156. 8, Zebra Karen Bob 187. 7, Thomas Henry Wendy 314. 8, Apple Samuel Jerry 108. Zero 6348 Karen 1, a violent sex offender. Molesting with impossible light activity in order to psychologically torture the person that the demon-possessed population, through the masses, individually acting as one entity, intends to sexually traumatize, violate. Okay? License 7LJV437. Six, Zebra Igloo Kelly 271. 9, Larry David Wendy 768. Okay, it's currently 10:01 p.m. The entity sounding a Tyrannosaurus Rex in the environment while the sex offenders are still monitoring. And this is the issue, that the government never ceases to stop targeting an American citizen until they track them down and take their lives. That is what is informing federal policy. That is what is informing the prosecution of domestic terrorists who are the people of the state in the United States. And they will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law based on the unlawful threat, based on their bloodthirsty and psychopathic nature, and based on the way that they have proven to you, those who are listening to me and watching me, prove to you how the federal legislation that I support, that I advocate, is absolutely necessary and nothing less severe. Because this is exactly what is necessary in order to expose and prosecute and enforce and protect American citizens for what it is no longer secretly able to do. Terrorize an American citizen, take their lives, take their livelihood, take their right to be free from murder by the government, murder from being claimed for criminal activity that they didn't commit, okay? Free from sexual violence, sexual trauma committed by a population of sex offenders, the demon-possessed population, who are psychopaths. A mentally ill population that wants to present as though it's sane, like you and I, and they're not. It's Satan's. These are the children of the devil. And they're sick. Okay? It's currently 10:03 p.m. This is P.O.C.
Okay, ongoing helicopter activity as the podcast is being processed on my device, which is monitoring. Remember this morning at the Ontario Town Square, that same agency is stalking me using helicopter under the fake sun remaining over me while that agency practices torture and is engaged in what is harassment, public harassment, with the demon-possessed gang stalkers who are engaging in a massive sex offense committed as a public entity. It's currently 10:41 p.m. helicopter activity, 10:35, 10:37 p.m., and again at 10:41 p.m. while the entity is stalking in a helicopter with demons who are sex offenders, and Engineer Light is moving all about. Engaging in terrorism while their evidence of the evidence of of the state of California ongoing targeting is being processed. So this is engagement in sexual violence and terrorism and torture, while the terrorists and the torturers and the stalkers and the co-conspirators to murder are being documented in this podcast, which is going to be added. It's currently 10:42 p.m. That's the Ontario Police Department. The terrorist in particular, Mike Lorenz, this is exposing a demon, and this is exposing a government actor that's going to be removed from office. And this is relevant to all of the terrorists that have engaged in kidnapping under the guise of representing an agency that's actually a domestic terrorist organization. And they're going to federal prison, every single last one of them. And so are the people of the state that engaged in gang stalking, just like the people of the state are now. They engage in this together when they commit kidnapping with the entity that's stalking in helicopter. And those are the terrorists that are going to federal prison, both the people of the state and the state that is acting via the demon-possessed psychopath that is the Ontario Police Department, that has a demon flying a helicopter, targeting me, pursuant to knowledge and the intent to obstruct justice, while evidence shall be published on the internet, noting it, in order to prosecute that agency and to prosecute the state. It's 10:43 p.m. It's federal stalking under Title 18 that the entity is engaged in. And federal stalking is underway while the entity is stalking with light as well. As you hear amplified noise, amplified audible activity is federal stalking conduct. And the entity that is surrounding, while you're looking at businesses and pedestrians and traffic, it's criminal presence, it's relevant positioning, it's public corruption, and federal stalking is underway. It is massive surveillance, and it is gang stalking. And that's the entity that is engaging in that. It's currently 10:43 p.m. This is P.O.C.